and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. IMF officials are expected to visit Libreville in February to assess Gabon's economic situation and discuss reform plans. As Finance Minister highlighted, the technical talks with the fund have intensified despite no formal loan request. Gabon's debt has risen to about 80% of GDP amid a persistent current account deficit. As trilateral talks continue in Abu Dhabi for peace in Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of consumers in Ukraine's Chernihiv region without power after overnight Russian attack. UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls Trump remarks about NATO troops in Afghanistan appalling, as Prince Harry says their sacrifices deserve respect. Trump accuses Canada of blocking the Golden Dome project over Greenland and warns of closer China ties. This comes as Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen calls the situation serious in Nuuk and says Denmark and Greenland will act together. A massive winter storm hits the U.S., forcing over 1,800 flight cancellations and causing power outage risks. At least 15 states declare emergencies as snow, ice, and strong winds disrupt travel from Texas to New England. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan warns Israel is seeking an opportunity to attack Iran. He says any strike could further destabilize the region and urges all sides to pursue a different path. 7 people have passed away and 82 people are still missing after a landslide in the West Bandung region of Indonesia's West Java province amid heavy rains. A landslide covered an unspecified residential settlement as well. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is in Shanghai as the U.S. chip giant faces fierce competition from local rivals and scrutiny from Chinese authorities. Now for this hour, we start with Russia-Ukraine. In Kharkiv, residents have huddled with children and pets seeking shelter as Russian drone attacks ravaged the city on Saturday. Streets were littered with debris and buildings were reduced to rubble, with 25 drones hitting various districts. At least 11 people were injured and vital facilities, including a maternity hospital and dormitories, were struck. This assault came after 2 days of diplomatic talks in the UAE aimed at resolving the nearly 4-year-long war. As the conflict intensified, negotiators from Ukraine, Russia, and the US are working towards a peace plan, but key issues, including the future of Donbass, remain unresolved. Despite the ongoing talks, Moscow's stance on territorial control in eastern Ukraine continues to complicate the process. Let's listen into what Kharkiv City Mayor Ihor Terekhov has said.
Атака, на жаль, Харків перебував під такими ж обстрілами, але це дуже суттєве пошкодження і дуже така важка атака по місту Харкова. Попередньо було влучання 25 шахедів по місту Харкова, було влучання в багатоповерхові житлові будинки, було влучання в приватні житлові будинки, постраждала лікарня, пологовий будинок.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Vaz, for joining us. Good to see you. Now,
thank you, Suma.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, can we say that the peace is close as, the 2 days of discussions continue, and we know that Ukrainian and Russian delegations are on the same table, unlike before, not like in a separate place, separate time, with US as a mediator. Now it's different. What do you expect from the difference in this talks that are held in UAE with different mediators?
Suma, I think you're right. This is a big moment. In the past, the Americans have met separately with the Ukrainians, and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have met separately with President Putin, which is what's happened this week. The unusual aspect is that you have trilateral talks taking place within a region that is not particularly involved in the conflict. It's in Abu Dhabi, and they would be seen as honest brokers by both the Russians as well as the Ukrainians. They don't have any skin in the game, and therefore, to that extent, they can be honest brokers. The Americans, of course, have their own agenda as to how they want to see this matter resolved. I think it's clear they want to see it resolved at any cost. They just want to see it finished. That's what they'd like, because it's another feather in the president's cap. So the important part of this, I think, is very much to try and ensure that the talks continue. What's disappointing is as the talks continue, the bombings continue as well, the war continues. And what would have been terrific is if they had accepted President Zelensky's view that there should be a complete ceasefire, and then the talks could proceed. Vladimir Putin is a different kind of leader. He believes you have to keep banging on until there is peace. So they'll continue, there's no question of that. But the issue is, how long will the negotiations take? The ultimate moment is going to be when Donald Trump sits down with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, and they sign that peace treaty. That's going to be the ultimate aspect. As we now know, the NATO alliance, the transatlantic alliance that is keeping a lot of support behind President Zelensky, is fracturing, first over Greenland, and now most recently over comments that the President of the United States has made about British troops and NATO troops in Afghanistan. This is simply not people have reacted very angrily. Keir Starmer has.
Yes, building on that, do you think that as Americans push their own agenda, do you think they have pushed it to the limits as there have been no breakthrough regardless? Do you think Europeans have lost trust in their mediation?
No, I don't think they've lost trust in their mediation. I think they've lost trust in them, their ability to get a peace treaty on the table. Of course, America is the most powerful nation on earth, and it's the paymaster to NATO. Whenever he decides, President Trump decides to have tariffs put on, it sends shockwaves through the market. There is no other country in the world like it. There's no deal unless America is part of that deal. So from that point of view, you have to have America there. What's fractured is the element of trust between allies. First, Venezuela kind of has dissipated because it's not central to European concerns. But Greenland is very much central to their concerns. And now the latest statements about the Middle East and the failure of NATO to participate. So that's what's caused the problem. Very quickly, Asuma,
yes.
If we could just look at why Zelensky is so angry. He was tempted with the offer of joining NATO. Yes. He was tempted with the offer of joining the EU. All those offers have now disappeared. It's those offers that caused Putin to then invade in order to protect his backyard, and the rest is history. So that's why he feels so upset. That's why he threw a little tantrum at Davos, that he's not getting the support that he needs. He can't upset Donald Trump because Donald Trump will just show him the door. But, he can upset the European leaders. Yes. Because they're a different kind of politician.
Yes. Thank you for highlighting that. Please, Mr. Vaz, stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, the U.S. Department of War has released its National Defense Strategy 2026, and according to it, the U.S. will be offering more limited support to allies. In a significant shift to its security priorities, the U.S. Department of Defense now considers security of the U.S. homeland and Western Hemisphere as its primary concern, instead of China. Previous versions of the strategy, which are published every 4 years, has named the threat posed by China as the top defense priority, although according to the 2026 report, relations with China will now be approached through strength, not confrontation. The defense strategy reinforces recent calls from President Donald Trump, including for greater burden sharing from allies in countering threats posed by Russia and North Korea. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Keith Vaz. He's a former Britain minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mr. Vaz, for staying with us. As you know, we were discussing about Americans, how they push their own agenda in places. What do you think the change or the shift of tone in national defense strategy 2026, and also can you tell us what's your analysis towards the change in China to North Korea?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question, Asuma. I think something's happened. Could you repeat the question?
Yes,
sorry.
Of course. Oh, don't worry. Yeah, so I was asking, what do you think was the change that's, highlighted about America pushing their own agenda? We were talking about this earlier, and then in national defense strategy of 2026.
Well, I think it'll come as a bit of a surprise to allies that there is now going to be a new framework. Of course, these policy documents are very useful, and we've seen them before, and people pore over them and they decide whether or not this is a change of activity. However, much more relevant is the fact that the president can change the strategy at any time. So although it's useful to know, it is actually part of an overall strategy, that it's going to go beyond the European alliance, it's going to go beyond NATO, and it's going to encompass other countries. But there's a dichotomy here. On the one hand, you talk about the broader brush of dealing with China. On the other hand, you are concerned about the way in which China is operating. So these documents, these strategies are very useful. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, they could be changed at a moment's notice by the president.
So how do you think, how frustrated is President Trump right now? And what's the situation of the alignment of US and Europe right now?
It's fractured. I can't tell you, Asuma, how upset people are in the UK about Donald Trump's statement concerning the situation there. They are very, very upset. They are very, very upset about the statement that the NATO allies did not do anything specifically in order to support the Americans, that they stood back, they didn't put themselves on the line. Of course they did. 485 British soldiers died in that conflict, and people are very worried and upset that they're just not being listened to. So I think it is important that we should look at ways in which we should try and alter that situation.
Yes, indeed.
How do we regain the confidence of the Americans? This is the crucial thing. How do we sit down and try and reset the relationship? It has to be done.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for highlighting that and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move on to Asia. A senior Iranian official has warned that any attack on Iran will be treated as an all-out war. The warning comes as a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group and other military assets arrive in the region, sharply raising the tensions. The official said Iran would view any kind of attack, whether limited, surgical, or targeted, as a declaration of full-scale war and promised to respond in what was described as the hardest way possible. Iran's military remains on high alert as the situation continues to escalate. The rising tensions are already affecting global travel. Several major airlines, including Air France, Lufthansa, Dutch carrier KLM, have all cancelled the flights to key destinations such as Israel, Dubai, Riyadh, and Tel Aviv. Some airlines are also avoiding Iranian and Gulf airspace altogether. While some locals have reacted, let's listen into what they have said.
در خصوص اینکه کشتی فرستادن برای جنگ احتمالی، من خودم شخصا فکر میکنم این به خاطر احساس خطر خودشون بوده، چون ایران همیشه گفته مواضعی که اونا دارن تو سمت خاورمیانه رو بمباران خواهد کرد و من خودم به عنوان یه شهروند نمیگم موافق چیزی هستم یا مخالف چیزی، فکر میکنم حقمون از این دفاع کنیم.
ما که نمیتونیم هموطن خودمون و کشور خودمون رو به کشور بیگانه بفروشیم. حالا شاید ما یه سری مشکلات اقتصادی داشته باشیم و روزامون رو واقعا به سختی بگذرونیم، ولی هیچ وقت نمیایم کشور خودمون رو به کشور بیگانه بفروشیم.
قطعاً یه اقدام برای حمله است، حالا یه تهدیدی برای حمله است در است. و خب چون بخاطر اینکه یه ناو جنگی رو الکی هیچ وقت اعزام نمی‌کنن، مثلا موقعی که یه ناو گروهه، فقط یه ناو، بس یه ناو نیست، حداقل 10 تا 20 تا کشتی هست.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. He is a senior journalist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, as tensions arise, how serious is this warning from Iran and the situation?
Well, there is a large American armada coming his way. The Israelis are also primed. So it is a serious situation for Iran, and they are trying to scare the Americans into not attacking. Now, the key question here is that they're still killing protesters. Official numbers are over 5,000 killed so far. They are also executing a good number. The whole possibility of a war hinges on whether the Americans want to effect a regime change. Against the idea of actually going to war with the Iranians is the fact that the armed forces of Iran seem to be loyal still to the Ayatollahs. They have not joined the protesters, and it is a considerable number in the armed forces, 150,000 people. And so a war would mean that first you have to neutralize at least a good number of these people for the rest to desert or join the opposition. It is also not clear right now whether the Americans have decided on who should replace the Ayatollahs, whether it would be the Shah, the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi, or any other. So all of this is still up in the air. But in the meantime, there is a 50-50 chance that America will attack. I'm sure that Israel would like this carried out. While there are many Gulf countries that are nervous about it because of what consequences may come to them, and there are several American bases all over the place which could be attacked in several of the Gulf countries. So it is something of great concern to both sides. Iran, because if the Americans attack full scale, they are likely to be eliminated, and the Americans, because it is not going to be a small skirmish, it's going to be a full-fledged war.
Right. As you highlighted, the Shah and the Shah's son could be a possible person to replace Ayatollah Khamenei. How dangerous is the vacuum if the current leader were to be taken out? How dangerous is that vacuum?
It won't be much of you can't take just the Ayatollahs out. You've got to take out their entire structure of supporting structure. Otherwise, the same regime would come back under another face. So you've got to eliminate the entire ruling class. If that is done, there won't be a vacuum, certainly. The Reza Pahlavi is probably the best option because he has already said that he will stop the nuclear program and he will stop supporting what he calls the terrorists, that is Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthi, and people of that type. So that is very palatable to American ears and Israel. So it remains to be seen what happens. If they put in Reza Pahlavi, at least on the face of it, this is what he's saying.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, moving on to Syria, Syrian government troops and Kurdish-led forces have remained on high alert across northern Syria as a ceasefire deadline approached, with uncertainty over whether fighting would resume. President Ahmad al-Shaara's government has pushed to absorb the Syrian Democratic Forces into the National Army following rapid territorial gains over the past 2 weeks. However, Kurdish forces have reinforced positions in Qamishli, Hasakeh, and Kobane, preparing for a possible escalation. Syrian and SDF officials have indicated the deadline could be extended by several days. This view is also echoed by Turkey, as it backs Damascus and considers the SDF linked to the PKK. The United States and France have urged restraint, warning that renewed conflict could trigger mass civilian abuses. Washington continues diplomatic efforts to secure a lasting ceasefire while managing the transfer of Islamic State detainees from Syria to Iraq, raising fresh regional security concerns. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for staying with us. Now, why is Syrian government and Syrian government allegedly ignoring the warnings from U.S.?
This is a complicated situation. There is a lot of factionalism on the ground, and being too closely allied with the United States is seen as a sellout by different factions of the Syrian government. We have to understand that the Syrian government is currently run by what was the opposition to, the old regime, and it has many of the inherited problems, as well as a need to keep the different factions together in order to stay in power.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Gautam Mukherjee for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Taiwan. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has expressed optimism about future semiconductor investments in Arizona following a meeting with U.S. Senator Ruben Gallego on January 23rd. Lai has highlighted Taiwan's focus on expanding semiconductor manufacturing and research, particularly in the Phoenix area, where TSMC is already investing $165 billion to build factories. Senator Gallego has praised the Taiwanese investment, noting that other states are envious of Arizona's growing role in the semiconductor industry. This is Lai's first in-person meeting with a U.S. official since the U.S. tariff deals was reached. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.